And then the best cut, I think, of the entire election season, Ann Coulter, back in 2015. I don't remember the exact date. I think it was June of 2015. Saying to Bill Maher and being scorned and mocked and ridiculed and laughed at that Donald Trump very well could win the presidency. Ann Coulter joins us now. In Trump We Trust, she now is having her last laugh. That is that is what I call getting in last licks in a major way.
Well, I'm happy about the result. That was 2 days after Trump's announcement, and I was waiting for what we've seen so many times before, for a politician to take a sensible position on immigration. The entire establishment, the media establishment, the political establishment, both political parties, Hollywood, all of those businesses, Macy's, The Apprentice, NBC, rose up against Trump, and we've seen it time and time again where politicians would back down. Marco Rubio ran for Senate, promising not to support amnesty. As soon as he gets to the Senate, what's he pushing? Amnesty. So that was 2 days after Trump's announcement, and at that point, Romney was the best we ever had on immigration until the mighty Trump. It took me about 2 weeks to see that, wow, Trump isn't backing down, to say pretty clearly that he would be the nominee, and I thought would win the presidency.
You know, a lot of people are trying to make the case, oh, look at, he put Steve Bannon in there. You know, as Mark Levin said, as our friend David Horowitz said, as Joel Pollack have said, these are all people that actually really know Steve Bannon. You have known him. I know him. This false narrative just shows me that the media that tried to assassinate Donald Trump's character and were all in the tank for Hillary, they haven't learned a thing, and they're back to their same old tricks, which, by the way, has now been rejected by the American people.
Yes, exactly right. We've just gone through 16 months with the media calling Trump Hitler. I believe every single op-ed columnist at the New York Times at one point or another in the past year had a brilliant think piece on the comparisons between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. And it didn't work, so now they're trying it with his aide. I'd never heard of it, and I'm sure you haven't. Nobody had heard of this alt-right until Donald Trump was running, but now having discovered these teenagers, they're really leading the way and taunting the media and the liberals. And their position, I think they're leading us the way out of this by just saying, no, actually, it's fun to be called a racist.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you.
It's the only reaction to this nonsense. I don't want to hear anyone going on TV and somberly telling us that Steve Bannon is not an anti-Semite, is not a racist. How about screw you? I
kind of like your attitude, Coulter. I think the days of Republicans apologizing for the built-in phony narrative. Could you look, if Donald Trump follows through on his agenda, I have an addendum to his tax plan, and I have an idea for his education plan. Tell me if you like it. He's going to
mention the penny plan. I'm flying to New York.
Oh, shut up!
You.
Will you just shut up? Well, that would be a good idea, by the way, but I'm not talking about that.
I want to get to that immigration. And can
I ask the question? So he's going to repatriate trillions. He's going to have a 15% corporate tax cut. The repatriation tax is going to be 10%, which is really low, which means a lot of money can be brought in. But if he added an incentive that it'd only be 7.5% tax if you invest in the cities that need it most, and when he says here's education going back to the states, he should go into major cities with predominantly black communities and say the days of horrible education for your children is now over.
Right, okay. But one thing I want to say about the sanctuary cities is just first on the general point, then on the specifics, and that is it really is such a ratchet effect with these liberals. They win in completely illegitimate ways. Rulings from the Supreme Court for abortion, for gay marriage, although there's no mention of abortion and gay marriage in the Constitution. And the next day you have gays showing up at that Kentucky clerk's office demanding that evangelicals hand over marriage licenses. Meanwhile, rights that are actually in the Constitution, the right to bear arms, Congress's authority over immigration, the federal government's authority over immigration, the commander-in-chief's duty to guard the borders, and we've had the Heller ruling on guns. What was that, 5, 6, 7 years ago? Google that for me. It was a long time ago. Try to get a gun in California. You still cannot get one, and I would submit to you, I bet you can't get one in Illinois. Immigration, this is expressly the duty of Congress to issue rules governing the admittance of people. It is expressly the duty of the Commander-in-Chief to guard our borders. That is the job of the Department of Defense, which is why these appointments are very, very important. Everyone forgets Department of Defense. Listen to that name, defense. What does that mean? It means defend America. It does not mean defend Germany. We ought to bring all those troops home from over 100 countries around the world and set them to work building the wall. Even the most extravagant estimates of how much a border wall will cost amount to less than 5% of the Department of Defense's entire budget. This is why every one of these appointments being made right now matters. I would love to see Senator Sessions as Defense Secretary. We need someone who cares about defending America and not defending the Ukraine and, various other countries that hate us around the world. As for how he can, a Trump administration, also HUD is going to be important. All of this money that pours into especially overspending states like Illinois and California, which is where a lot of these sanctuary cities are, and New York, Illinois and California are headed straight for bankruptcy like a bullet train because of those teachers' unions pensions. Not only will Congress, under Republican hands, they would be insane to bail out these overspending states and make nice states like Tennessee, Alabama, Michigan pay for the overspending of California. But you can, of course, withhold federal funding. They can't just violate federal law like this, and no serious judge would uphold these sanctuary cities.
I got to tell you, the most important thing for me now is that the Republicans get out of the way, realize that it's Trump that won the election. They didn't win Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. He did. And I actually worry about the Mitch McConnells and Paul Ryans of the world and whether or not they will undermine the Trump agenda or try and water it down.
I agree with you. I think McConnell is, we'll see. I think he's smarter, and I hope they have all gotten the message. Immigration is a bigger issue than they thought. Every problem is solved with immigration. It's interesting. There are a lot of things Donald Trump was the first to do as a presidential candidate. Certainly as a Republican, he's the first one to say, we're not cutting entitlements. You know what would go a long way to shoring up Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? Getting illegal immigrants off of it, getting the parents of H-1B visa holders off it. No, these are plans meant to support Americans when they fall on hard times or when they become elderly. The job situation, the black youth unemployment rate. How about we get them to work building a wall, building bridges? There is going to be so many wonderful things. Every problem is made better by a moratorium on immigration and building a wall.
All of that, I think, and I kind of get a kick out of you when you say, you did a column recently and you said, this is Trump's agenda. How many items on the agenda were there?
The first 100 days, I had a detailed schedule for him.
And what was day one?
Start building the wall.
What was day two?
Continue building the wall.
What was day 100?
Report to public on building of wall. Continue building wall.
And 99, day 99?
Hang on, let me check my notes.
Your way back.
Building wall.
Oh, so... But I agree with you. And also I would argue that it's time to do it. Were you at all worried when he said, well, some parts of the wall may be a fence, depending on where they are, but I'm building the wall?
Oh, good grief, no. You know what this reminds me of? Remember when the media lured George Bush the first into breaking his pledge, that outrageous breach with the American people? I mean, for the youngsters listening, when the first Bush, who had only was elected because it was supposed to be Reagan's third term, promised at the Republican National Convention not to raise taxes. He actually predicted how the Democrats would come to him. This was in his speech. They'll come to me and they'll say, we really need to raise taxes to kill the deficit. We'll trade you this. And he kept saying, and I'll say to them no. I'll say to them no. And finally it was, and I'll finally say, read my lips, no new taxes. Famous line, and what does he do? Gets into office and raises taxes. And the reason I mentioned that was The New York Times during that period and all media were so hilarious. They lure Bush into doing it, saying, "Well, he's got to do the responsible thing. He's got to raise taxes if he's going to be the adult in the room." And then he raises taxes, and they all attack him for flip-flopping. That's exactly what the media is doing now. They are so desperate to lure Trump into violating one of his pledges, one of the big ones. There are only 3 or 4 that he absolutely cannot go back on: the wall, deporting illegals, and it doesn't have to be done overnight. He's given us the order, the pecking order of how he'll deport them. Renegotiating trade deals. And not starting a pointless war. Those are the big ones. If he betrays us on those, they'll impeach him, and there'll be nobody to defend him. As long as he fulfills those, and I absolutely believe he will, as I did since about 2 weeks after his announcement speech, if he does those, he can shoot anybody on Fifth Avenue, and the American people will have his back. And I will also predict to you that he will get even more of the black vote in his re-election run, because he's one thing I've noticed, people have to go on TV and say something. They can't just stand there and stare or sit there and stare at the camera. So they all start saying the same things, even when they're manifestly insane. And one of the ones they were all saying this year was, well, when Trump appeals to African American voters, he doesn't really want their vote. He's trying to get the votes of suburban women. No, actually, I think he really wants the votes of African Americans. He has been absolutely said everything I've always wanted a Republican candidate to say. I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to bring back so many jobs and be so good for all Americans, but especially the working class and the middle class.
Those are the people that matter to me. I don't care about all these people in Washington. I want to see those people get their jobs back. Too many Americans have been suffering for too long. I call this the forgotten man election, and the forgotten man stood up and said, "I'm sick of it." Thank God. Yeah. And by the way, Ann, you were really out front in all of this. I give you a lot of credit as well. I tell you when you're a pain in my neck, so I've got to tell you when I like what you do. But this is what you were dead on, and thank you for always being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to talk to you, Sean. Bye bye.